Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
Rain had a way of making grief look beautiful, like the sky itself was mourning with us. The waves crashed against the rocks below the cliffside cemetery, where Ariana's coffin had just disappeared into the wet earth. My sister, my other half, gone at 26. As mourners drifted away, I noticed my father, Dexter Holt, standing apart from everyone. His black coat was soaked, his hand clenched around a small wooden box. He wasn't the kind of man who broke down. He was the kind who buried things, truths, feelings, and now, apparently, boxes. "Dad," I called, stepping closer. He didn't answer. He walked past the last headstone, down the narrow path leading to the ocean. The rain thickened, pelting against my face, but I followed. When he reached the edge of the cliff, he lifted the box high, his jaw tight. "Don't," I shouted. He didn't even turn. "Some things," he said, his voice trembling, "are better left beneath the tide." Then he threw it. The sound it made when it hit the waves was nothing, a dull splash swallowed by thunder. But something inside me screamed louder than the storm. I ran, slipping, tumbling down the rocks until salt water stung my palms. I spotted the box floating, tilting, drifting away. I plunged into the freezing surf, my dress clinging like chains, my lungs burning. When I reached it and pried it open, I saw a flicker of pink, then movement. My heart stopped. A baby. Wrapped in Ariana's shawl, tiny fists trembling, still alive. "Oh God," I gasped, pressing the baby to my chest. You're breathing. Behind me, my father's voice thundered over the storm. "Gemma, put it back." I turned, soaked and shaking. "It's a child, not a mistake." His eyes burned through the rain. "You don't understand. If people find out, I don't care," I screamed. "Ariana didn't die for your pride." He froze. For a moment, I thought I saw regret flicker in his eyes, but then he turned away. Clutching the baby tighter, I stumbled toward my car, blood pounding in my ears. I didn't know whose child it was, or why my father wanted it gone. But I guessed it was Ariana's child. I knew one thing. This baby had survived when everything else had drowned, and I would fight the whole ocean before I let anyone take him from me. The hospital lights were blinding that night, like truth itself refusing to dim. I stood trembling in the emergency room, soaked, clutching the tiny bundle as if the world might snatch him away. The nurse gasped when she peeled back the shawl and saw the baby's face. Red, cold, but alive. "He's hypothermic," she said urgently. "But he's fighting, just like Ariana." I waited through the night, my clothes stiff with salt and fear, staring through the glass as machines hummed around him. Every flicker of his chest felt like a miracle. When the doctor finally said he'd survive, I broke down in the hallway, silent tears that shook me harder than the waves had. I named him Aaron after Ariana. The name felt like a vow, a fragile promise that her story wouldn't end in silence. Days passed before my father came. He didn't knock, just pushed open the door of my apartment, bringing the smell of rain and guilt with him. "You've made a spectacle," he said, voice clipped, hands buried in his pockets. "Do you know what people will say when they find out?" I stood by the crib, tracing Aaron's tiny fingers. "They'll say my sister's son lived. That's all that matters." Dexter's face hardened. "You think sentiment will save you from ruin? That child is a scandal, Gemma." I met his eyes, my voice shaking but steady. "No, father, he's salvation." For the first time, his expression faltered. A flicker of pain, buried quickly. "You'll regret this defiance," he whispered and left without another word. That night, I sat beside Aaron's crib, listening to his breathing, steady, soft, alive. The storm outside hadn't ended. It had only moved inside our walls. As lightning cracked over the sea, I knew this was no longer about grief. It was about truth, and the price of speaking against a lifetime of silence. It was nearly 2 weeks after I brought Aaron home when I found the courage to do what my conscience had been screaming for. Call Simon Hale, the man Ariana had loved and the one my father had forbidden from ever seeing her again. My hands shook as I dialed his number. When he answered, his voice was hoarse, weary. "Who is this?" "Gemma Holt," I said quietly. "Simon, it's about Ariana." There was a long pause, just his breath catching on the other end. "She's gone." "I know. Your father made sure I wasn't even allowed near her funeral." I swallowed hard. there's something you don't know. Ariana had a baby, your baby. The silence that followed was heavier than grief itself. Then came the sound of a choked sob. My, what? He's alive, Simon, your son. I found him. Father tried to. I couldn't finish. The memory of the wooden box still clawed at me. Within hours, Simon was at the hospital. When he saw Aaron in my arms, his face broke open with disbelief and love. He fell to his knees beside the crib, whispering Ariana's name over and over. I turned away, tears stinging my eyes. We'll protect him, I said, voice trembling. But we need proof of what Dexter did. Simon nodded fiercely. I have messages. Ariana sent them before. He handed me his phone, filled with desperate pleas and threats from my father's number. That night, as Aaron slept between us, we formed a plan to bring everything to light, no matter what it cost. Later, alone in the kitchen, I found a letter slipped under my door, my mother's handwriting. I'm sorry, Gemma. I was silent when I should have spoken. The truth is heavier than you know. Her words shook me. For the first time, I realized my father's secret didn't begin with Ariana's death. It began long before, buried deep, beneath generations of silence. The courthouse smelled of old paper and tension. Every step I took down its narrow corridor echoed like judgment itself. Simon walked beside me, his jaw set, carrying the flash drive with our evidence, messages, hospital reports, and most damning of all, the dash cam footage showing my father throwing the wooden box into the ocean. Inside the courtroom, Dexter sat composed, his silver cufflinks gleaming beneath the lights. He looked like a man confident in his power, not one accused of abandoning his own grandson. My mother, Ellen, sat behind him, her face pale, hands trembling in her lap. When the judge, Carl Bailey, entered, silence fell so sharp it could cut. Simon took the stand first. His voice cracked only once, describing Ariana's last message to him. They're taking my baby away. Then I was called. My palms were slick as I placed them on the Bible, swearing to tell the truth. Miss Holt, the lawyer sneered, isn't it true your father was simply following your late sister's wishes? No, I said firmly. He was following fear, his obsession with appearances. My sister begged for help. He silenced her. When the video played, gasps filled the room. There was my father in rain and darkness, lowering the box into the waves. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mother began to weep openly. The judge's gavel struck once. Enough. I've seen what I need to see. He ruled that Simon and I would share custody of Aaron, and that Dexter would only have supervised visits. A lifetime of authority shattered in that instant. As my father rose, his face crumbled, and he whispered, almost to himself, I thought I was protecting our name. I looked him in the eye, tears burning hot. You buried the wrong thing, Father. You buried your daughter's mercy. And for the first time, he had no words. Months passed before life began to resemble calm again. Aaron was growing stronger, his laughter, light and sudden, echoing through the small apartment that Simon and I now shared. My mother visited often, bringing soup and quiet apologies. But my father kept his distance, his once commanding presence reduced to silence and letters he never sent. One gray afternoon he called. His voice was frail, like a man worn thin by regret. Gemma, meet me by the ocean, he said, please. When I arrived, the tide was low, the same shoreline where everything had fallen apart. Dexter stood near the edge, his cane planted in the sand. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I thought I was protecting the family, he said finally. But I only buried the parts of it that mattered. I looked at him. This man who had once terrified me, now just an old father breaking under the weight of his choices. Ariana wanted love, not legacy, I said quietly. He nodded, pulling something from his coat pocket, a silver locket. Inside was Ariana's photo, smiling. I couldn't throw it away, he whispered, but I can let go now. He placed the locket gently into the surf. The waves took it slowly, as if even the ocean hesitated to forgive. When I turned to leave, Dexter stopped me. Tell Aaron, his grandfather is sorry. I met his eyes one last time. He'll know when he's ready. Behind us, the sea rolled on, tired, endless, and merciful in its own time.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.